Hello, I'm Joe Dillette, owner of the Carving Shop. When you're starting wood carving, what are the basic things that you need and what do you need to know? Well, let's look at wood carving itself. The most important thing in wood carving, and we're talking traditional wood carving using chisels and knives. The most important thing is the sharpening. This is the triangle of wood carving, and the foundation is sharpening your tools, getting it razor sharp. And the next thing is learning about the wood in the grain, how the fibers react, what direction to go. The third thing is learning the shapes, how to carve the shapes, especially the round shape. And then the top of the pyramid is your techniques. But without this foundation here, it's very difficult to carve. So let's look at some of the equipment. Let's talk about these things. In the sharpening, the tools. Well, let's say this is Schaaf's beginner set tools. It's a 7-piece set of tools, very high quality. So when they say beginner set, they're not talking about cheap tools. They're talking about these are professional, they're top of the line tools. What makes it a beginner set is there's 7 rather than their 12-piece set. But with these 7, you can carve just about anything. So I am going to be doing projects using just these tools. There's almost no limitation on what you can do. They're very high quality, and you have to keep them sharp. When they come, they aren't quite up to par as far as being sharp. Very few carving tools come ready to ready to use, because carvers always have their own unique little angle in that. So what you need to sharpen any kind of a stone. I like a diamond stone because you don't need the water or the oil, and it won't get your oil on your wood. So you have a diamond stone, and then you must have a strop. And a strop can be either a piece of leather or a piece of wood with some buffing compound. Now this buffing compound is about a 1/2 micron aluminum oxide that's got some binders like wax that holds it together. It feels like a crayon, and you put it on like a crayon. And it's just like the razor strap that you buff your tools to get that razor edge on it. And the angle that you're using your tools at is about 22 degrees. I like mine maybe a little bit higher angle, but 22 degrees is the average, and that's the one I'd recommend if you're starting off. Now, a piece of wood works very well as a strop also. This is like a crayon, I said, and you can just rub it on like that, and now that acts as a strop also. And the reason why I like a wood is because there's no pillow action. It doesn't sink in like the leather. So the angle that you're holding as you're coming across on the strop is the exact angle that you're buffing at. So I've got more videos on my YouTube channel about sharpening, but sharpening just takes practice. That is the foundation. You must have a razor sharp edge with no nicks on it for it to cut the wood very nicely. Wood grain, the fibers of the wood are like the bristles in a brush. And if you keep that in mind, then you will be always going in the right direction. So if you were going to carve coming up on this angle of the brush like that, that's the right direction. That makes a smooth cut. But if you were to come like this, the bristles spring out. That's the wrong direction. So it's the same in the wood. If I'm coming on this piece of wood and I want to make it rounded, I want to come from this side, but I don't want to go down on this side. I want to come up on this side. So that's basically understanding the wood grain. Going with the grain here, going with the grain here. When you're on top, it doesn't make any difference if you're going this way or this way. But as soon as you start coming down here, it starts pulling the fibers out. So that's what to understand with the wood grain. So if you're making a rounded arc, you know you need to come up on this side and come up on this side. So having the mindset of a paintbrush will help you going the right direction on the grain. The shapes, if you're doing a ball, a round shape, or doing an arm, you can't tell if it's rounded by looking right here. You look at the edge, and by looking at that edge as you're going around, that tells you if it's rounded. And so that's how to see roundness, is by looking at edges. Cuts do happen in wood carving, so you will get yourself cut. And a way to minimize the cuts is to wear a Kevlar glove. And the Kevlar is the material that they use in bulletproof vests. Kevlar will stop a cut coming this way, but it will not stop a puncture like this because the fibers spread apart. The fibers are too loose in this. Now this particular Kevlar glove has got rubber bumps on it that help hold a piece, and over time some of them will wear off. But you put the glove on the hand that you're holding the piece, and then normally the hand with the knife does not have the glove. And so when you're working like this, if the knife does slip, it will prevent the cut, but I won't prevent a puncture. So when you're carving, don't push like this, because if it slips off, the glove will not stop a puncture. It'll go right into your hand. When you're carving with the chisels, always keep the piece fastened down. It's much safer because then both hands are occupied. You're either pushing the chisel with two hands or you've got the mallet and the chisel. But if you're holding the piece and taking the chisel and going like this, then it's going to cut you. That's very dangerous. Even if you're wearing a glove and using a chisel like this, remember you're pushing like that, it will not stop a puncture. One thing to consider is the bench you're working at. How are you going to hold the wood? There's many ways of holding the wood. This bench is made for my height, and how you determine the height of your bench is you stand upright at the bench, you hold your arm down at your side, and then one hand width below your elbow is the top of the bench. So this bench is made for my height. Then I don't have to bend over when I'm working, and it's not too tall either. So this is just about the right height. I can stand straight, and when the right way to carve with the chisels is you're going to be using your legs also, is to stand. But I've got techniques to show you ways to hold it where you can sit down also. And I do a lot of sitting down when I'm carving too. But as we talk more about the bench, how a bench is set up is you have the vise. The vise, you can hold a piece in the vise like that and hold it upright. But it also has these holes, and you've got dogs in the bench. And the dog is just something that drops into the hole, comes across, and this vise has got a little finger that comes up. And that finger pushes the wood and pushes it down into that dog. And that holds that piece solid. So now I can hold a long piece of wood because I've got dogs that go all the way down the bench. So that's one way of holding it. So let's say you don't have a nice bench and you don't have a vise like that with that finger that comes up. So another way to hold it, this is a very good holding device. So what it is It's just, you can use plywood. This is a little piece of masonite that you just drill holes. And I think these are maybe 5/16 holes, I don't know. But a hole where a wooden dowel will fit into the hole. And then you clamp that to the bench. Just a couple C-clamps will work. Then, because the holes are drilled random, you can find the spots where that will hold, and it holds it solid. Now you can pick it up, you can clean it off, you can look at it, you can drop it right back in that same spot, and it's holding it again. So this is good for holding very irregular shape things. So if you have something that's like a snake, you can put that on there and just put the pins in the right spot. And the nice thing about it is the pegs are wood. So if they were metal and if your chisel hit the peg, it would put a nick in the chisel. But with wooden pegs, if you hit the peg with the chisel, there's no nick. So this is a very good way of holding. So this can work on your kitchen table. You can sit at your kitchen table. You can work right on that. So that's another very good holding method. So let's say it's something that isn't flat on the bottom. Let's say it's something like this. And so what I did with this boot is I just put a bolt in the bottom. I've got a couple pegs where keep it from moving because there's only one bolt. So the pegs come up into that where the heel is and just keeps it from turning. But now I can take and clamp that to the bench. You can clamp it to your kitchen table, any surface, and that holds it very good. So now you can take your chisel, your mallet, and work on it like that. Another way of holding is on your lap. Here's a holding device that I used for years. It's all worn, and basically what it is, it's just a rough piece of wood. That I didn't want to use for carving because of the splits and all of that. And I just nailed a couple boards on as a corner. I drilled some holes in there to use as a peg, and now I can hold in a regular shape while I work on it. So for years, I used this in my living room when the kids were growing up. I'd throw a bed sheet down around me here, and this would be on my lap. And I could take a mallet, because the block is a little bit heavier, it doesn't move around quite so much. And if it does slide a little bit, you pull it back on. This is very good for holding small things. So let's say instead of a mallet, you're just pushing the chisel. Let's say you got a little irregular piece here. So let me bring this up closer to the camera so you can see it. But here you've got a little piece here, and you want to hold that. You see, just that peg in the corner holds that quite well. Now you can take your chisel or your knife and push it around on there, and that's not moving. Then you can take it off, put it back on, and again, that's holding it pretty solid. People ask me, why is a mallet shaped like this and not like a hammer? Well, a hammer is not as versatile. The shape like this is so you can come easy from this direction. You can come cross over like this. You can use it in many different, you don't have to watch the head to see if the head of this here hammer is going to hit, if it's going to hit the chisel or if it's going to miss the chisel, because it doesn't make any difference which way this is facing. And you can swing it with your whole arm like this. You can just use your wrist, or you can just use your fingers. So an older gentleman was concerned about taking a seminar because it was going to be a lot of mallet use, and he says he just doesn't have that strength in his wrist. And I said, well, you don't really need your wrist. All you need is your fingers. And his hand worked pretty good. And you can get a lot of power. I'm not using the arm or my wrist. I'm just flipping my fingers. And just by flipping the fingers, so I'm getting a lot of power in. So just that little bit of action with the fingers and the wrist hardly moving at all, and the shoulder. So he tried that, he could do that. So that's very good. So a mallet is used for power, but it's also used for control. So if you are making a delicate little line, and if you're pushing it by hand, it's so easy to slip. But if you're using a mallet, you can be very delicate. You can bring that right to a stop, exactly where you want it. This neoprene is a coating on here that makes it quieter, but it also lasts very long time. Till these things came out, this is what would happen to my mallets. The wood, this is a lignum vitae, very hard wood, started out looking like this one, and the chisel handle just keeps eating it up. And so the splinters keep coming off, and that's eventually how it looks. So it would take me maybe 2-3 years to get a mallet looking like this, where the neoprene, now this one I've had for many years, this one here over 10 years. It still is lasting very good. I think the one that Schaaf Tools sells is the green, but it's the same. It's the same material, it'll last just as long. Very nice, lightweight, good for control, and also good for power. So let's talk about the numbering system with the chisels. They run pretty much the same. They're not standardized, but they're similar throughout the industry. So if you take a chisel like this is a number 320 millimeters. So what does that mean? Well, it's based on a circle, that first number. Coming across like this is 180 degrees from here coming all the way around. And if you got a chisel that went 180 degrees like that, that would be about a number 9. This is a number 3, and if you could see the sweep, it's about like that. And so that would be right here. Let's take it from the center of the circle here. That sweep then is a number 3. So, and I don't know what that would be. Would that be 30 degrees of the circle? 30, 60, 90, maybe that's 30 degrees. But it's not standard from manufacturer to manufacturer. So most of the time, you go and you get a number 2. A number 2 is, number 1 is a straight chisel, like a carpenter's chisel. A number 2 to most manufacturers is a number 1, but it's askew. It's on an angle like this. But the higher the number, and normally when you get up to a number 9, it's 180 degrees. So, but here's the thing about these tools. Every one in this area is 30 degrees, so it's a number 3. But all their radiuses are different. This is a tighter radius than this one is. So the narrower, this is 20 millimeters, so it's almost 1 inch wide. And so that's a fairly big one. When you get into a number 3, this one here is a 12 millimeters, so it's about a ½ inch. So that's a tighter radius, even though it's a number 3, it's in here. And this is called a fishtail because it fans out like a fish's tail. When you get into the Vayner tools, and the thing I really like about the Schaaf is a lot of the Vayner tools have got just straight sides. these two sides are perpendicular, where the Schaaf Tools, they fan out a little bit, and I really like that. That's a feature that I love when I'm using it. They aren't much, but they're fanned out a little bit. And so this one here is a number 11. And so it comes up like that. So after number 9, then the numbers, as they get higher, they get into other shapes. So when you get into a V tool, now this V tool here is a number 12. Number 12 is a V tool, shaped like a V. Now the bottom, there's never a real sharp radius, because if there was, there wouldn't be a fillet on it, and you would that would be prone to breaking. So the radius on the outside is the same center of that radius as the inside. So the inside has got a little radius, and the outside follows that radius going around. This 7-piece set comes with several number 3s that I just dearly love. Comes with 2, these are called a Vayners. Vayner is different than a V tool. A Vayner is more like that, like a U shape, and the V tool is shaped like a letter V, and the rest of them are called gouges. And these are straight shank. You can get in their 12-piece set, they have a long bent chisel. Many carvers don't have a work area that's very large. They don't have a place for a big bench or anything like that. So I made a small one, one like that might work for you. This is made out of a sheet of plywood, and you can carry it around easily, and it all just folds together. So it locks a little bit in place, it won't come apart for you, but it stores easily. So to set it up, all you do so that's the way it sets up. It has a foot thing that you stand on here. Now you can push on it. You can't move it, so it's quite stable. I've got a little shelf underneath, and the height is right. I don't have plans for it, but the tabletop is 2 foot by 2 foot. It's made out of a sheet of plywood, and the tabletop comes up like this, and it has a little latch, 2 boards here that fit right down into here. And then what holds the thing together is this piece here that has 2 notches that comes through the holes here, and it just drops on there, so there's a notch in it. It's very easy to fold up, so if I wanted to take it down, it's just a matter of turning it down like this. That. It's all folded up. Stand that up in your bedroom. Thank you.